Let me show you how you can add the login feature to your React project. As you know, inside the registration, we just specify the input values and store that inside a database. But in the login, we are not going to store anything. We are comparing values. We are going to get the user input and compare that with the database value. If we found match, we're going to send the response as a successful login user. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my controller, login controller, and inside that we have the email and the password. We're going to get these values from the request. Just for that, we're going to validate that values, and then we're going to check the user hash password with this value. But before that, we need to add another validation before this statement. We need to first know that the login user is the existing user or a new one. If it is a new user, we're going to redirect the user to the register page. Otherwise, if it is an existing user, we're going to get the email and then first validate that user. Let me show you what I want to say. So before this statement and after this validation, just down here, I'm going to simply add here constant user is equal to, and then I'm going to call here my MongoDB scheme, which is user. As you know, we have the user MongoDB scheme at the top, this one. I'm going to use this scheme here and then specify here dot and call here find one method. This find one method is going to find a single document from the collection. Find one method is going to find a single document and return that. So we can store it in a variable. So inside this find one, I'm going to specify an object and specify here email. So if we have this admin.com user inside the database, this statement is going to return that complete document to this user variable. And just down here, I'm going to say if we don't have any user, or you can say if we don't have any document inside this user variable, I'm going to return a response. And as a response, I'm going to say here return response.status. Inside it, I'm going to specify 406. Then I'm going to specify here JSON response. And inside the JSON response, I'm going to specify here error. And error is going to be no account with this email. So we're going to return this error message if we couldn't find this email inside a database. As you know, inside this password, we have the visible password. Now we need to compare the hash password with this input password. So to do that, as you can notice here, we have the code here. We're going to use bcrypt.compare, and then I'm going to first specify the input password and then specify the hash password. This time, instead of this hard-coded value, I'm going to simply get this password from the MongoDB database. So as you can see here, if we found the user inside this database, this will return the document inside this user variable. And here, I'm going to say here user dot password. This statement is going to return this password field value. And if both password match, I'm going to return a response. So inside this response.json, I'm going to simply specify here username, and then I'm going to get the username from the database. So I'm going to say here user.username. As you can see, I'm going to get the user from this variable. Just down here, I'm going to specify comma here and then specify my email. And I'm going to get the email from the document. So I'm going to say here user.email. So if the email and the password match, I'm going to return this response. So just before this response, I'm going to check if we have value inside this is match. If we don't have any value inside this is match, then I'm going to return response.status 406 with JSON. Inside the parentheses, I'm going to specify an object and then specify here error. Now what I want to do is I want to compare this input password with the hash password. If both password match, this statement is going to return a data inside this isMatch variable. Otherwise, it will return nothing. So if we don't have anything inside this variable, I'm going to return an error message. And here I'm going to simply say invalid credential. Now let me save this file and back to my Postman testing tool. And here I'm going to change this URL and specify here login. And then this is a type of post request. So I'm going to leave it as it is. And inside this body right here, instead of this username and password, this time I'm just going to return email and password, because for authentication we need just an email and a password. and then I'm going to click on this send button. When I click on the send button, I'm not going to get anything here. But where is the problem now? The problem is this code is not asynchronous. Now when you execute your login controller, it's going to execute all this code at once. It will not wait for the response. This statement takes some time to find the document from the database and return to this user. JavaScript will execute this statement and move to the next one instead of waiting for the response. So what we need to make this code asynchronous. So the simple way to make this code asynchronous is to pass here async keyword. And then if you think that your statement is going to take some time to return a response, you can then specify here await, just like this. So once I get the response, JavaScript will execute the rest of the statements. And just for that, I'm going to do the same for this password as well. Here I'm going to specify await and save this file. And now when I click on the send button, you can notice I'm going to have the response what I want, because you can notice my code is now completely asynchronous. I'm going to get this username and email from the MongoDB scheme. You can notice here. Now, once you understand how you can authenticate the user, in the next lecture, I'm going to show you how you can authorize the user using JWT.